You're seeing the way banks are reducing interest rates, the fuel prices are being brought down. Things like those are done to reduce inflation. But reduce inflation at what kind of point in the economy? So usually, people are doing things like that when the economy is about to go really bad. The inflation is very bad. They're trying to cap it so the value of our currency maintains. But these are things that usually work in the temporary, in the short term. This always backfires in the long run because you actually solve that by creating jobs, and the guy is not creating jobs. So if you think this is the worst point we are economically as a country, we are actually at the beginning. This is now the point. If we are climbing a peak and going down, we are now at that peak, and now it's about to go downhill.
Government has only two ways of getting money other than raising taxes. It can go into the money market and borrow, competing with its own citizens and driving up interest rates, which it has done, or it can print money, and it's done that. Both methods are inflationary. We're victims of language. The very word inflation leads us to think of it as just high prices. And then, of course, we resent the person who puts on the price tags, forgetting that he or she is also a victim of inflation. Inflation is not just high prices. It's a reduction in the value of our money. When the money supply is increased, but the goods and services available for buying are not, we have too much money chasing too few goods.
So what is happening is that people are not doing their numbers. Even the parliamentary committees are not doing their numbers. And if they are, right, they're ignoring what they're seeing.
Okay.
And they're continuing. And that's why I'm saying I am now talking about the regime of William Samoei Ruto. They are continuing, right, the impunity of the last 10 years. And they are sinking us into a much deeper hole than you can ever imagine at a faster rate. They are collapsing this economy with what they are doing. They are not addressing the real issue. And the real issue is we have taken debt over and above what we should have taken. That is debt that is going to be with us for the next 60 years. That did not go towards anything, right, that we approved. And if we don't deal with it square on, you are going to collapse this nation of ours economically. And that collapse is going to come in the form, first and foremost, because you're going to see these tax revenues are going to get him nowhere. It is going to come with something called default. And when that happens, right, and I think the COB is ringing the gengele. Hapa kuna shida. Kuna shida. When it happens and it starts coming to Do's bank account and her M-Pesa, right, and anything she does, because you're going to start being told haircut, I want to see what Kenyans will do at that point. Because it means categorically that he is going to make us pay for what we never approved, that has never come for our benefit, right? And going to... It is not.
What would happen if we refuse to pay the odious debt?
What immediately happens is the following. Is that you say we can afford to pay what is not odious. That one, put it aside, we are going to pay it. But we need to audit it. Because as I also have said from before, we are clearly, in my view, have overpaid this debt. So we need to have checks and balances on this, our figures. So we need to say what is legitimate, pass through our parliament, is in our budget, we shall pay. What is odious, we put aside. And investigate its payments and declare it odious. Now, what will happen is that you have a crisis, but for a much shorter period. With a decisive leadership, within a matter of no more than 6 months, this matter will be sorted out for most Kenyans.
The purpose of the foreign policy in Africa was to reduce the population. So to give aid to countries in Africa, not clean water and schooling and things like that, but contraception and abortion. In order to shrink the population of Africa, because they have great mineral resources there.
That sounds diabolical.
It is. Yes.
That sounds like something conceived in the mind of Margaret Sanger.
Yeah, definitely. And so at the time, Kissinger and those involved with the Carter administration wanted to shrink the population, make sure that the Africans do not develop and do not use the resources for themselves, because we in the States, we need them. There's a concerted effort of foreign powers to control the population of Africa. Africa is a huge continent, could feed thousands more people, but the policies of the West, especially in Europe. For example, between 1990 and the year 2000, the United States, Canada, and Europe contributed about $6 billion in contraceptives, not to help the people, not to give clean water, clean food. That is
not to fight malaria, for example.
No, of course, perish the thought, never. Yeah. Let them die. That's the whole idea. So, in our work in HLI, we denounced this reality to make the Africans aware that they have to defend themselves.
The West has a plan to squeeze even more money out of Africa, and they're calling it tax collectors without borders. And so what they're doing is that they're training hundreds of thousands of tax collectors that aren't loyal to any one country in Africa, and they're providing those as resources so that the African governments can tax their own citizens more effectively. It's basically a 1-2 punch. The first thing that they did through the IMF and the World Bank was they got African countries in a lot of debt, and the cost of servicing that debt started to eat up almost all of the government revenue in many of the African countries. And the Western world came in and said, hey, what if we train tax collectors for you and offer all of our advanced analytical tools that we use to tax people in the Western world? And if you do these tax reforms that we propose, we'll give you even more loans so that you can do your big projects, or maybe you can get that chalet in Switzerland. But unlike the Western world where the tax money might actually find itself circulating in the economy, because they set up these African nations in a lot of debt, the money that they collect from this increased tax revenue is just going to get shot out into the Western world, which is something that even the colonialists of the 1700s couldn't have dreamed would happen. So is there anything that can be done about this? My recommendation is, if you're an African leader, even though it's hard, hit block on the World Bank, hit block on the IMF, and just don't do business with these people in the future. So I'm not trying to be negative. I'm a big believer in Africa, but I certainly want to call out a scheme when I see one. So hopefully if this is of value to you, you'll give me a like and a follow. That really helps out my channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.
Mimi kwa miaka, Rais wetu Ruto ni kama baba yangu kimiaka. Na kwa hivyo mimi namheshimu sana kama rais wa Kenya. Mimi ile course nimesomea katika university ni course ya economics. Na hii nchi ya Kenya iko pahali pabaya. Hii muhura tumekopa pesa 7.2 trillion Kenya shillings. Tukifanya hesabu ya hiyo pesa kuongea ukweli, huwezi ona hiyo pesa imeenda wapi. Kwa sababu hiyo pesa kidogo tu unaweza kuwa umeweka barabara yote ya Kenya over 20,000 rami, that is around 1.2 trillion. Unaweza kuwa umeweka bomba zote maji at 50,000 at 10,000 households, that is 500 billion. Kuweka stima at 10,000 households at 35,000, that is 350 billion. Ukiongeza zote, hata kujenga a level 5 hospital in every constituency, a university of 1 billion in every constituency, hiyo pesa haifiki 3 billion. Na hiyo kusema hiyo, hakuna mtu tunatukana, tunasema tu kwenye tunataka Kenya iende mbele.
Nilisema mimi ni mtu ya vitendo, na mimi ni mtu ya biashara. Anataka watu wafaidike kwa biashara. Wachana na hii makazi ya serikali. Unajua rafiki yangu alisema bottom up, mimi naona tu ni watu juu ambao wanapata kazi. Mimi sioni watu bottom wanapata kazi. Wachana na hiyo maneno. Kama ni shares unataka kupurchase, nionyeshe gate ya shares kwa hii stock market. Unajua pesa, ukiwa na pesa ndio the ultimate freedom. Kweli ama si kweli? Ukiwa na hela, mambo sawa. Kuna mtu anakutisha.
You have to know,
yes,
certainly, there will be consequences because they will look at Kenya as a credit risk.
No.
They will increase the credit rates. So there will be a period where you will have to deal with some of the consequences of a decision like that. Now, the question is, what would you be able to do to mitigate some of the consequences?
Yvonne, you want us to live in fear.
No, it's not fear. No,
You're
it's
saying
not fear.
Fear of this happening.
No,
I'm
Jimmy,
sorry.
Jimmy, it's not fear.
Let me answer.
There are consequences, though.
Let me answer.
How would you deal with it?
Let me answer. First and foremost, forget about that fear mongering.
international community this or that, sijui nani this or that. I'm sorry. No matter what they do, we can live within our means. We don't need them. So why do they want us on a chain? Why do they want us on a chain? If we legitimately owe IMF, and it is in the budget, we'll ask those that we paid illegitimately to return it. To return it. Because as I told you, we have paid almost 10 trillion to this debt. That is still at 11 trillion, never coming down, just growing. So let's not live in fear as a nation. Let us not live in fear. I don't live in fear, right? They say when you fear nothing, right? Then what? Those Gen Zs that went to parliament, what did they fear? A bullet? And after the bullet, they still went into the chamber. They succeeded. And it's very sad that they were killed. Over 200 have been killed. We mourn them. They are heroes. Let us not live in fear. What consequences? We can live within our means. We don't need their money.
Show me precedents of where a country has been able to invoke this principle of odious debt to say that we will not pay the money that we owe. And where was this done?
2, Mozambique. Mozambique in 2019 took something called the tuna bond, very similar to our Eurobond. And when the regime fell in an election, an investigation was done by the citizens of Mozambique, where they challenged the odious debt of the tuna bond. It was $2 billion, supplied by even banks like Credit Suisse of Switzerland. I can tell you they won that case in their constitutional court. They were up against, their laws are not even as good as ours. They won that case in their constitutional court. They were up against parliament and an executive, and it was declared odious. Do you know Credit Suisse even refunded money and actually had some of their staff removed from office? It was successful. Malaysia had the MDGB scandal. And I asked Kenyans to watch something that's available even on YouTube, right? Called A Man on the Run. And it explains $4 billion of theft supplied by Merrill, I think it was JP Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase, right? I believe it was. I think it was maybe the other. Anyway, Goldman Sachs, it was Goldman Sachs. That gave that money, so-called for a sovereign wealth fund for development that government was doing. They called it and termed it odious. It went to people's pockets, right? It was struck off, right? And even the former prime minister is serving a 12-year sentence because of it. So it has been successful. In fact, the Americans started it with Cuba in the 1930s. So this is a successful model.
If you were president today, what would be the 1, 2, 3 things that you would do to solve the crisis in the country?
I'll tell you. The first thing is that I would cut off the chain of debt. Because I want you to understand that in as much as all this is going on, I told you we only had a deficit of 1.3. Kenyans, up until today, have paid 9.8 trillion towards that debt and still owe 11 trillion. It is something I would cut off like yesterday. And that frees up government money to be able to provide services to Kenyans and stimulate the economy by taking money back to the people. And that is what you call now economic liberation. The one thing that has not been understood by many people up until today is what period we're in. We went through the political rights period, which is about cutting up this cake for seats, as they are trying to do now. Nobody cares about it because we passed it. The 2010 Constitution gave us our rights. Now we are into the economic rights period, where we define economic models about the bakers of the cake. I, for example, am a capitalist who believes in an essence of social democracy, social justice, okay? And I must create my model. This is the defining moment of ideological economy, ideological politics. I myself will be very interested to see the private sector be the driver. So I'll never take their money. I don't need it.
Ruto ameamua kuharibu nchi, na Ruto na Sakaja na Zakari Kwenya lazima waende nyumbani. Bunge power. Ambao wanasema Ruto aende nyumbani haye. Wenye wanasema Ruto abaki ni hata hakuna bwana.
Na mimi ni kijana William. Nimetoka Kamagutu location. No job. Why? Ukiongea ukweli wanaugua.
Yeye amekuja.
Ukiongea vitu kuongea ukweli atatakuwa. So kuwe.
No matter how bad a man is, he can always serve as a good example of a bad man. That's what I was taught when I was doing journalism.
Wacheni tu mimi niseme na mapema. Ndio kama kuna list na andiko mniweke kwa list. I can't wait to reject Finance Bill 2025. I can't wait because I know it will be something absurd. It will be something mental. I can't wait. Mniweke kwa list jameni. List ya reject.
Majenzi mko? Kazi mnafanya kwa mtandao ni mzuri sana. Na tunapongeza nyinyi. Na muendelee. Mtaendelea. Lakini mtandao peke yake haitoshi. Tunataka mjiandikishe kama wapiga kura. Wale watu ambaye watakomboa Kenya hii, wenye kuamua Kenya itaongozwa namna gani, ni hao majenzi wetu mwaka wa 2027. Lakini hamwezi amua Kenya itakaa namna gani kwa simu peke yake. Lazima mchukue vitambulisho, lazima mjiandikishe kama wapiga kura. Siku hiyo ikifika muamuke saa 9, muungane na sisi na wengine, tuende pale kwa debe, tutafute uongozi wa maana ambaye utaheshimu wa Kenya, utaheshimu demokrasia na utakubali kufanyia kila mtu maendeleo. Tumekubaliana majenzi?
Now, why do you want Ruto gone?
We want Ruto gone because he is killing innocent people. He's wanting to pass the Finance Bill 2024. He's putting tax on sanitary products that girls can't even buy. He's can't go to school. He's corrupt. He's taking the money. He needs to go.
Yes.
Get out. If you're going to raise anything, start with your hairline.
Nice.
Control, Alt, Delete, Ruto. The drunk did better than you. Drunk did better than you.
Nice.
Mungu yetu itoe Ruto Kenya, hata kama angalau na jali. Sisi Kenya tumechoka na Ruto, maisha imetuharibikia, analipisha mpaka sodo ya wamama. Pure kabisa Ruto. We don't like you, go home. Tutatafuta kiongozi ambaye anapenda mwananchi na anapenda kijana kama.
They want to be described as honorable even when they are horrible. They acquire things which they have not worked for. They promise us things that they know they will never deliver. And there is no shortage of such men and women in the African continent.
Now the next election, yes. Unajua hawa ndio watakuwa nasema fagia wote ama mtasema namna gani? This generation, yes, they use their might because they didn't vote, the largest vote in the last election.
They don't like me, why them a fight me. They like me, chewing a bomb, and a bite it. They like me, chewing a bite it. Don't like power and you. When I trust them, even if we put them. When I touch them, stay fine, not touch them. When I trust them, what they have, I don't them. In fun, I say, you must